The Expanse, Season 6, Episode 4.
Yeah, the good news, again, not Naren Shankar, so...
Noack wrote this episode this week, just as the one last week. So that was good news. I was glad to see that in the opening credits, because I feel like he is one of the better television writers I've encountered. On this episode, we start out with Laconia, like we have every other episode this season so far. We see the little girl at her brother's funeral, or wake. It was a gathering for his death. He had been hit by a car, and that's how he died. There was a Martian man talking to her, and he was talking to her about sacrifice and giving something up and making it sacred. I'm not exactly sure what he was getting at with that. I guess we will find out where that's actually going. We did see that crazy doctor that Fred Johnson had been keeping. This is the scientist that Fred Johnson had been holding on Tycho Station. I believe Anderson Dawes liberated him from Fred Johnson. I'm not sure who got hold of him after that. If it was Marco Inaros or what happened.
Well, if he's on that planet, and this guy's specialty was the protomolecule...
Yeah, and Marco Inaros apparently has a ship by that planet, or around that planet. So, I mean, it's looking more and more like this is protomolecule related, that they used the protomolecule to engineer life on this planet.
And you suspected that with that creature we saw last week, that maybe, we still don't know yet, but maybe got some bizarre beginning to it.
Well, I mean, I wasn't sure if that was from humans coming to the planet and bringing protomolecule with them, or if the protomolecule had been there before the humans, and so were the animals. But it's starting to look more and more like this was done by humans, using the protomolecule. So, I mean, these are the experiments that Dr. Crazy Pants had been wanting to do all along. Yeah, he was one of the people behind what happened on Eros, testing the protomolecule on all those belters. Clearly he's a dangerous individual. That guy actually is a psychopath. He has no concept of morals, right or wrong. He seems to have no emotions whatsoever anymore. He had a medical procedure to put a stop to that. It'll be interesting to see what happens to him in the end. And at the end of that section of the episode, the end of the Laconia portion, we saw the little girl wheeling her brother out of their home, and I assume taking him to the forest, to those large creatures that I guess healed the little bird that had died, which is what I predicted last week would happen.
Yeah, you've been predicting a potential pet cemetery where they're reanimated, but perhaps not the same.
Exactly.
We'll wait and see if that actually comes true.
You bury somebody in the pet cemetery, they come back to life, but they're not the person they were before they were killed. They come back as something dark and unnatural. So it'll be interesting to see if those creatures out in the forest do indeed heal her brother, or what happens.
Yeah, I did notice the beginning part of this episode for me, although that stuff was important, I didn't really get engaged with the episode until the next part I'm sure going to talk about is with Dromer and them.
Well, I mean, the thing about what happened on Laconia, it was predictable, obviously. As I said, in the last video that I made about the Expanse, I was predicting a pet cemetery situation. I saw that her brother had died, and I knew this is exactly where this was going to go. So that was predictable. Again, that Martian talking to her, I'm not really sure what that was really about at this point. The sacrifice, that was weird. You usually don't say that to little kids, especially if you're just some dude.
Well, with the Martians, and again, I don't know if this is what he was doing, but they talked in previous seasons, especially I think the first season, they just talked about Martians that were, as a culture, they kind of sacrificed the individual, they kind of had a community feel for building Mars forward into some sort of terraformed community.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were talking about how they sacrificed a lot to turn a rock into a garden.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes a lot of sense. However, him talking to that little girl like that, her brother is laid out on the table in front of them, dead. That just seemed really weird. And then, of course, Dr. Demento comes in, and he's ranting about how apparently he was trying to make contact, and somebody actually sent a coherent message back. So, is this going to be our first experience with real alien life that can actually communicate? That we'll find out.
Or it makes me wonder, I'm trying to remember what they were called. Was it the Builders?
Yeah, because we still don't know what happened to the Builders. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, 2 episodes doesn't seem like it's enough time to really wrap all of this up.
No.
So we'll see what's left behind as far as mysteries that are unsolved. On Ceres, the woman who had been working with Marco Inaros, I guess she's the new administrator of Ceres. She was giving a speech trying to rally the Belters against the Inners. I mean, even after everything that Marco has done to them, to her in particular, because he left her behind, he now has contributed to the explosion of the water tank and a lot of Belters dying. She's still following him, so...
Yeah, and that's going to get interesting. I know you haven't gotten to it yet, but they did, on a couple of other storylines, they did touch on this concept of either loyalty to Marco or, in Drummer's case, what she did. So it's getting interesting what's happening with the Belter stuff right now.
The Martians told Earth that they would like to strike Medina Station. Earth said no. So it's likely looking like Mars is going to strike Medina themselves without Earth's support.
And Ava Sarala, she warned that, I'm guessing that was a Martian general.
Yeah.
She warned her that, this feels like what Marco is expecting and could be a trap, so we're not going to fall for this. So if the Martians do go it alone, it makes me wonder if they're going to pay a price for doing that.
Yeah. Monica Stewart, the reporter, she was recording the dead and telling stories about the people who had died. And Ava Sarala let her go right ahead and continue doing so. Well, I don't even know who the hell that guy was. One of the Earth officials wanted her to stop, but Ava Sarala let it go.
She also interviewed that Belter...
The Belter who had the cat.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that she explained to Ava Sarala that what these videos... Ava Sarala was worried that these videos were making Earth look weak, but Monica Stewart explained to Ava Sarala that the videos she has been making, they actually make everyone look weak. And the implication of that being that all this war and hatred is weakness. We'll see how that plays out. And of course, on the Rocinante, Clarissa was doing maintenance work, and she discovered that Holden had actually disarmed the warhead that hit Marco Inaros' ship, that he was responsible for the warhead not detonating. And she told Amos, and Amos confronted Holden, and of course Holden had no excuses for himself. So Amos is mad at Holden.
We strongly suspected this. I guess we didn't know for sure, but then later Holden was talking to Naomi, and he did confirm that he disabled the warhead because he didn't want to be responsible for Naomi's son's death.
Yeah, he didn't want to be responsible for killing Philip, and Naomi laid into him because she didn't want him doing things for her without asking her first. That she tried to save Philip and she failed. So I mean, at least she seems stronger in this episode than she has in a while. It sounds like she's just as tired of her emotional bullshit as I am. So that was nice. I was glad to see that. Having a little bit of self-awareness. A lot of characters these days don't. So I was glad to see that somebody did, at least one.
Yeah, and later in the episode, or maybe it was concurrently, you had Philip, who was working on a repair crew because his dad demoted him to that repair crew. Philip was showing some, I don't want to call it humanity because he might be insulted by that, but something you could warm up to say, well, this is a person. But then at the end of that storyline, he just kind of reverted back to this
being
is probably a lost cause.
Well, yeah, I mean, because that guy who was working with was watching the news, and they were talking about what happened on Ceres. The guy that Philip was working with, his brother had been on Ceres. The guy hadn't heard from his brother since the explosion, and it seemed that Philip was genuinely upset by that. But as you pointed out at the end of the episode, when they saw Drummer's speech announcing that she was coming after him.
Yeah, and I know you haven't gotten to that yet, but the Drummer story was the best part of this whole episode, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the Drummer story. But then again, Drummer's a badass character, so I was glad to see her back.
Yeah. But anyways, before all that happened, Philip, while working, discovered that the torpedo had been disarmed. It wasn't a dud. The notion that it was Marco's luck or that he was some sort of chosen figure, and that's why he survived the battle, is about to go out the window.
Well, it's going to get interesting, too, because the stuff that you mentioned about Naomi being upset with Holden, well, Philip knows that Naomi is probably on the Rocinante with Holden.
Yeah.
So he might assume that it was Naomi that asked for that.
That saved his life.
Yep. Even though that was not the case, that was the conflict that Holden and Naomi were having, that Naomi said, no, don't worry about that anymore. But I bet you Philip's going to think that his mom was the one that asked for that, not to be armed, or I guess to be disarmed.
Yeah. Drummer went to steal a bunch of Marco's stuff. And unfortunately, there were some guards with the cargo. So some of her crew got killed. One of them got pinned under a crate. They had to amputate his arm, which was awful.
Like right when he was pinned, they put like this futuristic tourniquet around it, and then they had to cut it off because they had to get out of there because they were worried that a ship was going to be approaching soon and they were going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So they didn't have time to do it carefully, so they put the tourniquet around it and then took a saw and just cut it off.
Think worse than U.S. Civil War movie. That's what that was like. So that was bad. And
Drummer got pissed off.
Oh, yeah. She was very angry. And that's what prompted her to make that recording and send it out. That she's basically done with that coward Marco Inaros' shit. She's pissed at him about what happened with Sirius Station. And she's not putting up with that shit anymore. She basically was saying, come at me, asshole.
Yeah, you saw her making the recording. That was pretty badass. But then later on when you saw her on the screen and she was delivering that speech, I think even Marco's crew was like, oh, crap.
Well, I wonder how many of that crew were once part of her faction.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how many of those people decide to change allegiances from Marco to Drummer. And I will say that Kara G, I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name. Boy, she is one amazing actress because she looks like this very skinny, small woman. But when she's playing, when she's playing Kamina Drummer, oh my god, she seems like the most deadly thing imaginable.
Well, that's what was missing in that first episode of this season that I complained about. Is what was missing in the first episode of this season was Drummer just was missing that fire. She was, I don't know, to me it didn't feel like Drummer, but ever since that first episode they've nailed her character again. And yeah, this fairly small person, when she gets, you piss her off and you're scared. That's a character that has an intimidation factor going on. So it's great to see Drummer because her back, because I like that character. She's a badass character.
This show has a number of badass women on it. Drummer and Draper are two of my favorite characters on television right now, just because they are two totally badass women. They seem like fully fleshed characters. They don't seem one-dimensional. They were well written, which is such a relief.
Well-written female characters. Let's just call it out for what it is.
Yeah, well-written, strong female characters. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for strong female characters, plus, it just occurred to me, they are both women of color, too.
Yep.
If you're looking for strong women of color characters, like The Expanse is the place to be looking, because there are a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, I saw a commercial. There's a video game of some sort of Expanse game. I don't know the details, but the trailer for it has its Drummer, and she's narrating while she's, I guess, walking down a corridor, getting ready to go to a hatch and push the button. I don't know if somebody's in the hatch, she's getting ready to eject. I'm looking forward to that game just because of the Drummer narration, so I'm curious what that game's going to be like.
Yeah, me too. There was a really good conversation between Clarissa and Holden. Clarissa disclosed to Holden that she was the one who actually discovered that he had disarmed the warhead, and she had told Amos. She also told Holden. So back when they were all on the Behemoth, she heard Holden say that they were all reaching for violence, and couldn't we try something else for once? That was when she decided she wasn't going to kill him. She also told him that she actually very frequently thinks about all the people that she killed, that they haunt her, that killing's a terrible thing that you can never take back. and that he shouldn't feel bad about choosing not to kill.
By disarming that missile.
Yeah. She was referring to choosing not to kill Marco and Aros and Philip and everybody else who was on Aros' ship. So I mean, that was a very profound conversation, talking about the guilt and remorse that she has for killing people. Which, again, is a complete 180 from...
Michael Burnham.
Yeah, from Michael Burnham on Star Trek Discovery. Again, it's easy to compare these two characters, Clarissa Mao and Michael Burnham, because they both were doing something that they thought was the right thing to do. They killed a bunch of people, but only one of them actually feels remorse for what she did.
Yeah, because Clarissa even said some of them actually deserved it and some of them didn't, but all of them she thought about all the time.
But they all haunt her. All of them. So I mean, that was a good conversation between Holden and Clarissa. So we're back to the Pella again. They heard Drummer's message from Marco. One of the guy that Philip had been working with repairing the ship, he said at least it was fellow Belters who had stolen all their stuff rather than Inners. And Philip got really pissed about that. And that's when he made his little speech in support of his father. Part of me wonders if he even believes what he said, or if that was just reflex.
Well, he got called out, Philip, when Philip was working with that technician guy, when he first started working with him, and that, I don't know her name, but Marco's, first officer.
Yeah, the blonde lady.
Yeah, when she was trying to talk to him, and then he was just kind of being Philip, I guess. And do you remember how the conversation went? It was something like how are you going to demonstrate that? And then she pointed out when Philip, a few episodes before, after he killed his friend, sent some trinkets to his family to try to ease his guilt.
Money. Yeah, he sent them money. Mm-hmm. Basically making it sound like that was pretending that the money that he sent and the apology was enough, or even just a valid show of remorse. I found that interesting coming from her, I guess. She told Marco that she wanted to be in charge of Medina after all of this is over. And I wonder how much of this is just her hedging her bets that he's going to be successful so that she can get what she wants.
Yeah, it was interesting with her, too, because when the episode picked up after that skirmish they had last episode, and Marco was saying, I'm trying to remember, let the senior officers on those other two ships that fled, space them, and if somebody then calls to try to beg for their lives or something, kill that person too. First officer was just kind of going along with it, but then later she refused that order of killing the person who asked to spare the other two, and he got irritated with her for a while, and then she was trying to explain to him, yeah, but you're Marco Inaros, you have an image to uphold, and this will make you look weak if you do this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and she was right.
But you could see that she had some loyalty to Marco still.
But it's in her best interest that he stays where he is.
So she can get what she wants?
Yeah, because she's not really in charge, but she's giving counsel to the guy who is. So, I mean, he's kind of like jail cover, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really think that she's trying to pull his strings, and he's going along with it because clearly she has the clearer head about this stuff. Mm-hmm. Because he's working on emotion, a lot of this stuff. Like she pointed out, he appears weak, like losing that battle got to him. So that's why he was basically having a bunch of his officers killed, because he was pissed off.
Yeah, she said, you're Marco Inaros, you're supposed to let stuff like this roll off your back.
Yeah, exactly. And that he would look merciful if he just reprimanded people and let it go. Or he could look like a big baby and kill a bunch of people and look weak.
Well, plus, I mean, just generally speaking, if you make a habit of killing off your officers, sooner or later they're going to turn on you.
Well, that and all you're going to have left are a bunch of idiot yes men. So, there you go. Needless to say, you shouldn't be killing off all your best men if you want to win your war.
And I don't know what's going on with Philip, because when he kind of turned in was the cafeteria he was in?
Yeah, it was in the cafeteria.
When he kind of turned in that, the guy made the joke about at least Belters did it. Philip got all bent out of shape about that. See, I don't know what that was about, because earlier in the episode, I think Philip, I said it earlier in this video here, that I think Philip is going to assume that deactivation of that warhead was his mom that did that, when he blew up in the cafeteria, I just kind of wonder if all that, like, clearly that kid's torn between, because I think when he was working with that maintenance guy, you know, the maintenance guy was talking about his brother and his brother growing up and having that ailment where, you know, for a belter not being able to...
Vertigo.
Yeah, having vertigo so he can't go out in space. That was an odd thing for a belter to have, but as he was explaining that to Philip seems like he was connecting with that, and he almost seemed like a normal person.
A human.
For a little bit.
Yeah.
But then, you know, snap your fingers and he's going back to...
I think Drummer triggered him. Like, I think he has an intense hatred of Drummer. I don't remember why. If this is because she was friends with his mother, or what the problem is. But he has a special hatred for Drummer.
I don't remember if there was a connection between him and Drummer. I don't think directly there was. It must have been indirectly. Because last season, I only watched once because I didn't care for it. If there was a story mentioned there on how he was connected with Drummer, I guess I missed it.
I don't think there is one. I think it's just that she was friends with his mother, and so therefore anyone who's on his mother's side is against his father. It's the brainwashing from Marco. I think that's why he hates her so much. But I think that's what triggered him, was that it was Drummer and Drummer's connection to his mother. So yeah. And that's, I guess, what happened in this episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Drummer storyline a lot. The rest of it, although I didn't think any of it was wasted, it was just kind of...
It wasn't as action-packed as the previous episode. Yep. This was more of a Fallout episode where you saw what happened after what happened in the previous episode. Yeah, I mean, did anything really move forward other than... Drummer deciding that she's just going to head-on go after Marco at this point?
She's essentially at war with Marco.
Yeah.
No, the propaganda stuff that Monica was working on, the detonation stuff that we talked about, almost everything was character development stuff except for the Drummer. I mean, Drummer stuff had character development, but it turned into an action after the fact.
Yeah. Then I guess that's what you get with serialized storytelling. Some episodes are going to be better than others, just because of the way the beats of a story would go. So this was a portion of the season where we see a lot of fallout for what's come already. Here's to next week.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it. It's just too bad there's only two more episodes to go. I know, again, I said I'm not going to cross the streams, but watching the character development, even the stories that work, the plot lines in this episode that were character development, there was only one time it felt like it was approaching telenovela area, and that's when Holden and Amos were on the ship repairing it. Everything else had a purpose for character development. I hate to keep pointing this out, but this is why Star Trek Discovery doesn't work for me. Because when they have on that show, when there's any sort of interaction with characters, it almost always seems to be pointless and forgotten in the next episode.
Yeah.
And with this, it matters. I mean, Clarissa last episode started this conversation, well, actually before that, because when Holden took her in as her crew, like, her and Holden are slowly becoming friends, and it's developing as the show's going on, as we've passed like three episodes here.
Well, that's character development, story development. I mean, they're actually doing a good job, unlike some other series we know.
I realize this is a review of the Expanse and not Discovery, but the fact that right now we're reviewing both of these series, and except for the first episode of this season, which wasn't bad, it just was, for the Expanse I mean, which wasn't bad, it just was filler, review stuff. But it's so night and day when I watch an episode of The Expanse, and then later in the week I watch Discovery, and then I watch The Expanse again. When you compare and put those two things together, one is a great piece of science fiction, and that would be The Expanse, and then Star Trek Discovery, which is young adult soap opera. That's about the best credit I can give the thing.
Well, that's really what it's been turned into. When you compare the two, if you're looking for a decent science fiction show, a cerebral show, then you should watch The Expanse.
With really good characters and really good action scenes. When they do space battles in The Expanse, they're really, really good.
Yeah, unparalleled, really. And, Star Trek Discovery, if you're looking for something that's more like it should be airing on the CW, aimed at tweens, then there's the show for you. However, don't watch season 1 with your tween, because there was a bunch of gore and some wrong sex scenes. Don't watch it till they get rid of all the Klingons. And even then, don't watch it. Just don't watch it.
I only brought this up because these are two science fiction shows. These are the dominant science fiction shows that are on right now. And it is so... There is such a gap between quality, between the characters, the story, the polish, the space battles in The Expanse. Whatever Star Trek Discovery is, I mean, I don't even know what to call that. I honestly don't know what to call it because I think it's worse than any of the latter Supergirl or Flash seasons. I think it's just horrible. I mean, I think it's a horrible show.
It is a horrible show.
I compare it because every week when I watch The Expanse and I see these characters, these battle scenes, we are discussing, is he going to realize that, his mom wasn't on the ship or, Drummer and now declaring war on Marco? Like, all these things matter and it's like epic in a big scale way. And with Star Trek Discovery, this season they're having some galactic threat or another galactic threat. Every season seems to have one. It's just so, there's no weight behind anything they're doing in Star Trek Discovery. It doesn't feel like any stakes are there's any stakes.
Everything about that show feels shallow. Like, really shallow.
And with The Expanse, and it's interesting because The Expanse, for most of it, you're in just our solar system. Just our 8-planet plus Pluto solar system. Now, you go through the ring in, Lacona. Is that the planet?
Laconia.
Laconia, thank you.
Yeah.
There's some... Through the interstellar ring, there's some interstellar... But most of this, we're talking Ceres and the Rocinante... All this is just in our solar system, or just our Earth solar system with Mars, and they created a solar system that feels so big. Yeah. And then you've got Star Trek Discovery, where they have, in theory, an entire galaxy, or at least a quadrant of the galaxy, and it feels so tiny. And I don't understand how a solar system can feel so big in The Expanse, and a galaxy can feel so small in Star Trek Discovery.
I don't know. I think it takes talent to write that badly.
Yeah, or lack thereof. It was definitely a recommend for me. A bit slower this week than last week on The Expanse, but definitely a good episode. I would highly recommend watching it. The Drummer stuff was really good when they were boarding that cargo pod or whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
Which was a cool idea. You had all these freight pods that were tied together in these balls or whatever, and then they kind of space jumped on them to go in there to steal supplies. And that was a pretty cool scene. I don't think I've seen anything quite like that before. That was cool. The whole Drummer stuff was cool. This was a continuation of last week, and I recommend it, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, I recommend it too. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget to subscribe and like and leave a comment.
Thanks for watching.
Take care.